Good afternoon. This is the control room here in Toronto, where viewers in Canada will see Our World this afternoon. It's one of 45 control rooms around the world, linking the world, or the developed world, in this first global television program. I have with me in the control room here Professor Marshall McLuhan, the so-called prophet of this electronic communications age. I hope you don't object to that word prophet. You must be tired of it.
I'm quite helpless.
I don't know if you know what's going on around here, Professor McLuhan. I don't.
It's a real humming, buzzing confusion.
Can you say what message the medium has around the world this afternoon?
Well, I can say right off, for example, that everyone will look at this program as if it were something they had already seen before, with just a little addition of this or that. Because that is the inevitable way in which we look at everything. It's the same old thing with a little item or two added. This, in fact, what is happening today around the world is what has happened at Expo. A huge mosaic has been created, which is in effect a kind of X-ray of world cultures. Not a storyline, not a perspective, not a point of view, but a kind of X-ray through this mosaic is created in which everybody can participate. Everybody is surprised at Expo at how deeply they appreciate and participate in the show. Nobody seems to realize why it is so unlike other world fairs. And I think this show this afternoon will have some unexpected repercussions in that way. People will be drawn into it as participants, whereas they're merely viewing themselves as spectators at the moment.
Doesn't this, though, while it's creating an entirely new intellectual climate, spiritual climate, for those who can communicate, doesn't it present another problem, though, of dividing those who can from those who can't?
Well, what is called, for example, a generation gap today, the TV generation of kids have a completely different set of perceptions from their parents. The parents grew up in a visual world, the world of, in effect, of movies, where they had cameras and pictures and points of view. The kids have grown up in an X-ray world. The TV camera does a perpetual job of X-ray on them, and they take this for granted. X-ray means depth. X-ray means participation in depth in whatever they're doing, and calls for a totally new kind of commitment to everything they're doing. That's why when they encounter situations in which they are merely classified entities, as in the schoolroom, they don't feel wanted, they don't feel needed, they just drop out. Now, this strange new all-at-once situation in which everybody experiences everything all at once creates this kind of X-ray mosaic of involvement and participation for which people are just not prepared. They have lived through centuries of detachment, of non-involvement. Suddenly they're involved. So it's a big surprise. And for many people, a kind of exhilaration. Wonderful.
But there are people in the world, the majority, who don't live in this new, involved society, and they're still in the age of the camel.
You think they're trying to live in the rearview mirror. They're still desperately trying to get an image of themselves in a situation that is familiar and known. Whereas in actual fact, the situation they find themselves in is not well known. It's utterly surprising and terrifying. The people have always, in all ages, Stan, have always been terrified of the present. The only people who seem to have enough gumption or nerve to look right at what's happening under their noses are artists. They're specialists in sensory life, and they just deliberately look at the present, you know, as if they dared it to ruin or do something to them. They're like Perseus and the Gorgon. The artist looks into the mirror of art and says, the heck with the Gorgon's image, I'm not terrified. But most people simply expect, when they look at the present, to be turned to stone, as by the Gorgon's countenance. And they're terrified. Therefore, they prefer the rearview mirror. Nearly everybody who looks ahead, as it were, is in effect looking in the rearview mirror. And if people try to prophesy about today's show, they will be steadfastly looking in the rearview mirror.
But we are, nevertheless, as you have said, those of us who participate in this new society, this electric society, it is a new sense of awareness and involvement. But my question is this: the majority of the world's people, and our satellites are going around the world today, are completely out of it. The cameras don't reach them. They don't hear the message.
They're not watching the show at all.
And they're not in the rearview mirror, they're in the past. Centuries. And
No.
isn't that gap widening as our
Well, no, you see-
rocket-like society goes forward?
You see, something like Expo, though, creates a mosaic of all those societies as well as all the latest ones. And everything happens at the same moment. You can be in Beirut or in Tokyo or in New York at the same moment in this kind of mosaic world of all at onceness. And so, in effect, the backward countries have to become contemporary simply because of this instantaneous quality of the mosaic. Though everybody is aware now that for some reason or other, all backward areas have to be updated, have to be brought into the show. They are all participants. There's no question, it's no longer a question of philanthropy or just do-gooderism. They just realize these people are part of the show and they've got to get into the act. Until we put on their makeup or something, they can't go before the camera. So the whole backward territories of the world are being upgraded very high speed. In fact, one of our most mistaken efforts at upgrading is warfare. Because when you fight a backward country, you, in a sense, educate it to hurry its education up into the present. That's the way Julius Caesar did it.
But didn't we just see an example in the Middle East where one nation had an army which was the complete master of its mechanized society, fighting another which was mentally in the camel age,
I know.
to some extent.
Oh, but you can see that the generation gap there, or the technological gap, created frustration and stalemate at the council tables, even though the war didn't.
Very much so. But you are confident that these nations, the backward nations who are not yet in the electric age, they're in the transistor radio age, as you have already pointed out.
But you see, in our own homes, the generation gap between child and parent is fantastically great. But we always accepted that as a normal, natural growth gap. Now, today, because of the enormous speed up of information, the child is becoming an adult. The adult has to acquire all the empathy and intuition of childhood in order to live with his own children. The gap between adult and child is just disappearing overnight. And this is as big a revolution as any backward country has to face when it's being updated into the 20th century. Oh, yeah, the biggest revolutions in the world are taking place under our own roofs, at our own dinner tables. And this all at onceness just wipes out the old distances and times between age groups and between ethnic groups, civilized groups, so on. This kind of speed up enables you, for example, at Expo, to see all the cultures of the world in X-ray form, in depth. What you encounter at Expo is not history, but the immediate experience of these countries. You walk into a pavilion and you experience them not as they were or they will be, but as they are, as an immediate experience, as immediate as the smell of a cigarette.
I'd like to, on this day when Mr. Kosygin and President Johnson are meeting at Glassboro, to look back at a comment you made a number of years ago, about 11 years ago, I think, and you pointed out the difference mentally between a print society and the newer, or to some extent oral society, the electric society. And you made the interesting observation that the United States and Soviet Union are the two great countries which came to greatness in the era of the printing press.
No, I'm not sure that I wish to say just that. The United States is entirely a product of the printing press. Russia had many centuries of history before print and still has huge commitments.
But the Soviet Communist Society is a printing press.
Oh, right.
Minded organization.
The 1917, the October Revolution, was entirely the result of the print technology of that era, yeah.
But do you find in those two countries today any indications of perhaps problems that they inherit from the printing press?
Oh, yeah, because the United States is always looking for blueprints and always looking for solutions in forms of classified data. This, of course, is utterly alien to a Russian culture with its oral traditions of involvement. And so there's great gaps, cultural gaps, between the U.S. and Russia. The Russians haven't had time to become completely permeated with print culture by any means.
Did you by any chance see Mr. Baroudi, the delegate from Saudi Arabia, speaking the complete Arab oral man?
No, and a man who resented the coming of the European civilized blueprint into the Arab world, imposing on them. What we consider, that is the way we have always thought of civilization. The giving the benefits of civilization to Africa or anything has always come to any print-oriented people as the laying down of new blueprints, new times for work and education, programming. But today it has to be done by dialogue, by completely a new kind of involvement and participation in their problems. And this, the old blueprint method is just disappearing with television. Television is an X-ray, not a blueprint. And so it goes right inside problems, inside cultures, in depth. There are so many humorous stories going around today that express the grievances and the tensions that arise from these situations. I wish we had time to rehearse some of them.
Well, I'm afraid that our time is up. I've got to get down to the studio.
Well, thank you.
And many thanks, Professor McLuhan. I think we have to head off around the world. Europe, Asia, Africa. Now we move 3,000 miles across the Atlantic to America and Glassboro, New Jersey.
This town, until 3 days ago, was distinguished only by its anonymity. A flat, slumbering farm town suddenly jolted awake. I'm Dick McCutcheon of NET. It is now 3:17 p.m. And almost exactly 90 minutes ago, American President Johnson and Soviet Premier Kosygin entered this house to resume their meeting on the summit in this, the unrarefied atmosphere of Glassboro. Just as the resources of international television have been mustered for this program, Our World, so the bewildering hardware of American communications has descended on this small rural community. And it's difficult to determine which Glassboro finds more complex, the enormous issues of the summit meeting itself, or the technology that accompanies it.
From Glassboro, we go 2,000 miles north and west to Ghost Lake, Alberta.
From the tension of world diplomacy to peaceful reality here at Two Rivers Ranch in the Alberta foothills, where at 12:18 the cowboys have returned to work from their noonday meal to continue cutting out, which is the selection of animals from the herd. That's Randy Dunham, the ranch foreman, riding King Leo Bar, a cutting horse which is valued at $100,000 and is considered to be one of the finest sires of his breed in the world. Randy Dunham pretty well grew up with horses and, in fact, started cowboying when he was 15 years old. Now, at 39 and holder of the 1965 Canadian Cutting Horse Championship for 4-year-olds, he devotes himself to the breeding and training of these remarkable horses. A cutting horse is a highly trained specialist who works to a pattern of movement as intricate as the ballet. Today, because of the requirements of the cattlemen, the animal reflects in appearance and action the purpose for which he was bred. He's deeply muscled and heavily shouldered, capable of rapid speed and the ability to stand stock still one moment and to run full out the next. With King Leo Bar and Randy Dunham, we see the unique relationship between a man and his horse. This is Bob Switzer in Ghost Lake, Alberta.
Still live, west across the Rockies, 400 miles to our last stop, British Columbia, and the edge of the Pacific Ocean.
This is Mike Winlaw on the shores of the Pacific Ocean at Vancouver. This is Kitsilano Beach, where the time is 19 minutes past 12 noon. And it's a beautiful day. Bright sunshine, the temperature 78 degrees. Great weather for a Sunday afternoon at the beach. Across the warm sands and just a few short steps away, the blue Pacific. The water temperature today close to 70 degrees. To the west, several hundred yards past the swimming area, the Kitsilano and Vancouver yacht clubs. And all the Sunday sailors are out today. Farther west, beyond the brightly colored sails, our friends on the rim of Lake Pacific. It's 12:20 Pacific Daylight Time.
Now out across the Pacific, on from Sunday into Monday, across the international date line on our 4,000-mile journey forward into Asia.
This is Tokyo, the capital of Japan, at 20 minutes past 4 a.m. on Monday morning, and it's raining. Dawn has just come, but in Tokyo, underground subway construction work is pushed on day and night. Solutions to traffic problems are especially urgent for Tokyo, which has a population of 11 million people. And one of the means of solving traffic congestion is the construction of a subway. This has been undertaken at a rapid pace. Right now, in 6 separate locations in the city of Tokyo, men are working 24 hours a day. These men are engaged in subway construction while most people are still asleep. Tokyo works night and day to solve its traffic problems.
From Tokyo, we go 5,500 miles south across the Pacific. For the first time, we cross the equator and move from summer to winter. This is the most complicated technological switch in the program. To achieve it, a satellite ground station in Japan has to change from transmit to receive, another in Australia, the opposite.
5 on Monday morning, and for Melbourne, the start of another working week. My name's Brian King. We shan't be seeing the dawn for another couple of hours. It's been a fine, still night, and the temperature at the moment is 49 degrees, which is about normal for this time of year. The first tram conductress on duty is Irena Stempen, who was born in Poland. She came to Australia in 1951, one of more than 1 million people to make their home here since the war. She likes an early start so that she can spend most of the day at home with her 2 children and 2 grandchildren. The other member of the team is driver Bill Sires. He lives just across the road with his wife and 8 children. Today, about 500,000 people will ride on the trams. Workers, school children, mothers going shopping, and people just out to enjoy themselves. Like Tokyo, most of the city is still fast asleep. But already some of the early workers are out on the streets waiting for Irena and Bill. The first tram of the day from the Hannah Street depot. Midwinter in Melbourne, Australia, 24 minutes past 5 on Monday morning.